Us today. My name's Danielle Goodrick and I'm the Knowledge Product Manager for CIPS, and I will be hosting the webinar today on behalf of CIPS and RS Components. Just to confirm some housekeeping, you will be muted throughout the duration of the webinar and be given the option to ask questions at the end. So please use the Q&A facility to add your questions and we'll get through as many as possible as we can at the end. During the webinar, we'll also be running 3 poll questions, so at the appropriate time these will pop up on your screen to answer the questions, and we'll share the results on the screen. The webinar will last up to an hour and it will be recorded, and the recording will be shared directly with you from RS Components following the webinar, and you'll also receive a copy of the MRO report. We will also host this on the CIPS Knowledge Partnership page, which is cips.org/MRO. Firstly, I'd just like to thank you for joining us, for taking the time to join us today, and also for your time in completing the survey. We had a huge number of responses this year, over 700 globally, which is massive. So thank you for taking the time to respond. It makes the report and insights we're able to share far more valuable. We're so pleased at CIPS to have partnered with RS Components for the 3rd year running as experts in the MRO category. Through the survey, we've been able to look at the challenges our members are facing in this indirect category and support you with content and training to help you overcome some of these challenges. Often business pressures are focused on cost reduction, but CIPS encourages its members to challenge the business and work with stakeholders to look at the best value long-term solutions and adding value rather than buying just what you're told at the lowest price you can get. There's no magic number of suppliers, but rationalising and focus on building relationships with key suppliers to leverage efficiencies and focus on innovation can deliver huge competitive edge for your business, and this value far outweighs the price down exercise. So I'm so excited to introduce our speaker we have today, Peter Malpass, who's Regional Vice President for Northern Europe at RS Components. Today, Peter will discuss the main challenges identified from the survey results, plus opportunities to address these with some tangible takeaways. Some of the themes that you'll hear throughout the webinar today that have come from the survey are common across all procurement categories and sectors. Things like visibility of spend, influencing stakeholders or senior buy-in, but especially where soft skills and competencies of the team are concerned. That continues to be a challenge for the profession year after year around talent and professionals with the right skills to manage and influence relationships internally with key stakeholders to drive change. More often, it's the internal stakeholder management skills that are critical to overcoming these day-to-day challenges, whether it be how to talk to the maintenance team, getting early involvement in projects and buy-in into strategic change projects, and ultimately show the added value procurement can offer, such as innovation, driving efficiencies or risk management. And Peter will cover a lot of this today throughout the webinar. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Peter to introduce himself and the findings, and I'll be back later to launch the poll questions and the Q&A. So during the webinar, if you have any burning questions for Peter, please add these to the Q&A and I will pose them at the end. Over to you, Peter.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much to Danielle. As Danielle says, my name is Peter Malpass. I'm the Regional Vice President for RS Components in Northern Europe. What does that mean for us? Northern Europe is the UK, Ireland, Scandinavia, South Africa, India, export and emerging markets. So it's a really important territory for RS Components and is part of our EMEA business region. Personally, I've been within the RS family for 4 years, but working out that this morning ahead of today's call, I've now got over 25 years, I'm embarrassed to say, experience within the UK and European MRO industrial supplies landscape. So delighted to be speaking to you all today. So I'm here in Corby, which is one of our UK centres of expertise, and I'd just like to add my thanks to those of Danielle for your engagement, both in completing the survey, over 700 participants, which is great to see, but also your engagement today, because I know that time is precious for everybody. So for you to make the time from your busy schedule to come and join us today is really important. So much appreciated. As Danielle mentioned earlier, you will receive a copy of the full report directly from us over the next week or so. But what we're going to try and do today is just take you through some of the highlights and some of the key points that came out from the survey. Danielle has mentioned there will be an opportunity later for some question and answers, so please do feel free to pose any questions you have, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go through. So when we look at the RS and CIPS Knowledge Partnership, I'm really proud to have this opportunity to talk to you as an audience and really to engage with such an esteemed group of procurement professionals. As mentioned, this is the third time that we've done this piece of research, and it's growing momentum every year. It's growing in popularity with a broader stakeholder community engaging, and that just gives us a richer insight and better content for you. And the objectives really when we're looking at this research is to establish the pressures faced both personally and professionally at a business level from our procurement community, to identify the strategies that our customers and companies are adopting to address some of these pressure areas and to increase efficiency within procurement. Specifically, we've asked some questions this year around understanding the usage and attitudes towards inventory management solutions and vendor management solutions, and also look to identify some key areas that you work to build supplier and customer relationships. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about RS, not to give you a sales pitch, but I think at RS you will see from the screen, you know, we exist to make amazing things happen by innovating for the engineers of today and inspiring the engineers of tomorrow. At our core, we are a high-service, multi-channel distributor, but that to some degree is a given in today's world, and as we say, our purpose is all about making amazing happen and working with engineers of tomorrow. Hence we do a lot of work with the STEM program and through schools and colleges to inspire the next generation of engineers. Few stats just to give you a little bit of perspective. We serve over 750,000 customers. We give them access to over 2,500 or slightly more than that now, just under 3,000 major leading brands. We have around 500,000 items in stock to choose from, and we operate over 28 countries with just over 5,000 employees. And to give you some idea of the scale, just from the UK distributions hubs, which supply globally, we dispatch over 55,000 parcels on a daily basis. We also have fulfillment centres in the US, in France, in Spain, in Italy, and in APAC as well. So the scale of the business is quite far-reaching, and we touch many customers. In terms of the brands that are part of the family, we are all part of the Electro Components group. That's the trading entity. RS is the brand that I particularly work with. Allied Electronics and Automation is our brand in North America. Then we have sub-brands of RS Pro, which is our own brand, an exclusive RS brand. We have IESA within the Electro Components family, which are an independent business process outsource organization. We have OKdo serving the single board and makers community, single board computing, I should say, and makers community. And then we have Design Spark, which is a community of designers using free software to facilitate both mechanical, electrical, and electronic design and PCB design. So that's a little bit about RS, or the Electro Components Group. So let's move into the survey per se and really share some of the highlights. So if we look at the research, you will be able to see on the screen some statistics in terms of the sorts of people and the level and role that organizations or individuals who participated in the survey are. So in the top left, you'll see the 63% are in a managerial role, 32% are director or senior level, and 5% operating in an operational procurement. When we work on the industry sectors, you will see, I won't read them for you, but a very broad cross-section of industries. You'll see them by size and scale, but hopefully you'll recognise there is a large representation across all industry segments. Types of roles, we're talking head of procurement, senior procurement and purchasing managers, category managers, procurement and purchasing managers, buyers, supply chain directors, contract managers and operations managers, just to give you a flavour and a feel. In terms of the types of companies, in terms of the size, 36% of respondees are from companies with 1,000 or more employees. 22% are from companies with between 250 and 999 employees, and 42% of respondees are in an organisation in companies with fewer than 249 employees. We mentioned that the respondents this year are over 700, which is fantastic, and is a significant improvement in terms of numbers on last year. That said, even last year we had over 1,000 downloads of the white paper, and the white paper related content, including various articles, attracted 10,000 page views. So by proxy, one would hope that the reach this year will be even greater. So once again, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the business pressures that we saw coming out of it. And what I would say generically, when we're looking at this piece of research, there are a lot of similarities in the previous 2 years. There are some subtle changes and some interesting trends that we'll pick up as we go through, but there are some consistency of themes and consistency of messages which I think are great for us. And what we can see is the number one priority is still the pressure on the procurement community to reduce the operational budgets. And that increased from 58% to 62% this year. So probably won't come as a surprise to most of you listening, but a general increase. It was still the number one priority, but it's gone up in its weighting a little bit. 42% of respondents stated reduced inventory costs was a key business driver and a key business pressure. But then the next point on the right-hand side is something that we've really seen a change. So we mentioned 39% of respondents cited a need to improve asset reliability and asset performance. There was quite a material shift there, and 39% represented the UK. If we look more broadly across EMEA and APAC and consider the whole landscape, that was up to 51%, and quite a significant swing there of 6-7% or more across the various respondents. So broader respondent cross-section in terms of numbers, and quite a material swing when saying whilst operating budgets were still the priority, there's a big improvement in the need to improve reliability and asset performance. We also saw the next most significant area, excuse me, was the respondents stating they're under pressure to procure more sustainably and more ethically. And that's certainly something we see within our own supply chain here. The pressure and the need to be able to do that more visibly and auditably is really increasing importance. There were some differences depending on the size of the business, with the larger businesses more focused on the overall reduction in operational budgets, with the medium-sized businesses, that's the 250 to 999 employee size, the improvement in asset performance really came out loud and clear in that group. So that's a really material change we're seeing there. If we look at the day-to-day challenges in controlling activity around indirect materials, such as MRO, okay, the number one challenge that came out, and again a slight increase on previous years, was the challenge around ensuring contractual compliance to preferred suppliers. So whilst there was an increasing trend to offer more contracts with consolidated and preferred vendors, the challenge to ensure compliance was still very much a key challenge for the audience. 48% talked about the need to deliver annualized cost savings and actually to measure those cost savings. So I think being able to quantify and measure those cost savings to play back into the business was something that was a big challenge. 45% of respondees stated managing stakeholders over multiple sites. So we can do a central procurement deal, but then the management and stakeholder management across multiple sites was a real challenge. And I think as Danielle mentioned earlier, that visibility and that lack of spend visibility, the poor quality data or lack of good data really was something that came out loud and clear in the survey. Point 4 was back to the aging assets, the need and the increasing need to maintain and improve aging assets, improve the uptime, reduce the downtime, and improve the performance. So whilst broadly speaking there were some similarities, those are the things that came out loud and clear, with the aging assets, as I say just now, being the big change. Some of the changes were more pronounced in the UK and APAC region, but predominantly they were pretty consistent. And when we look at the different customer sizes, again, as I said on the previous slide, large customers, unsurprisingly, the management of multiple stakeholders over multiple sites, the biggest challenge there. The medium customers who find the stakeholder management maybe slightly easier, then comes through the management of aging assets, and the smaller customers tended to focus more around the management of cash flow as being an important driver for them. So, moving on, what do you view as the biggest driver of downtime associated with the key assets and your maintenance teams? And product availability came out strong here, but we're back to maintaining aging assets, and maybe as CapEx becomes a little bit tighter at the moment, the need to improve the aging assets was a big issue at 54%, lead time and stock availability at 50%, and then holding of incorrect inventory on site. Maybe the customer's not having the right product at the right place at the right time. So in a situation where we have pressure to maintain productivity, a drive to improve as much value as we possibly can for assets and the need for speed, having the right product at the right place at the right time and the maintenance of the aging assets were really important. Okay, so first poll question.
Yep.
So Danielle, am I going to read this question or you?
If I can read it out, that's fine. So you will see on screen now a question which will say, are you actively reducing your supply base for MRO? If you could select yes or no on the screen, and I'll just give you a few seconds to do so. Thank you very much for your responses. So as you can see, the results on screen were 71% yes and 29% no. So a high proportion of you are actively looking to reduce your supply base, which is really interesting. And perhaps if you're not doing it, why not? Have you done it before already, or is it not in your strategy at the moment? I don't know if you can discuss that a little bit more.
I think it's really interesting. So first of all, thank you for taking part in the poll, and maybe not too surprising to some of you. We did a similar poll in the US with ProcureCon recently, and that came out as 87% of the respondees and participants were actively looking to reduce their supplier base for MRO. And so similar numbers, kind of 70, 80, 90%. And so we definitely see this is a trend, and particularly when you think about MRO and the average order value. The average order value within RS components is still less than £150 per purchase order. So with a very low average order value, a high number of transactions, it's no surprise that the reduction of vendors and the consolidation of more spend with fewer suppliers is a key area. And when we go back to the survey, if we just can, okay, when we look at it and the questions that we asked, we went up from 48% last year to 51% see rationalisation as a number one route to drive procurement efficiency. Interestingly, when we talked about the number of MRO suppliers on average, and bearing in mind we're talking about large, medium and small companies, what is the average number of MRO suppliers? And the number came out as 39. So you will know, hopefully yourselves, where you stack up against 39. And I guess the larger the business, one may expect that to be slightly higher. The smaller the business, slightly smaller. But on average, 39 is a number of active MRO suppliers engaged with those customers that took part in the survey. Of those customers that took part in the survey, not only are they seeking to reduce the number of vendors in a significant number, but 37% stated identifying value-added services from those suppliers as really important. What can people do, what can suppliers do over and above the fundamental and basic supply of a product? How can we add more value to customers was something that came out loud and clear. 32% stated that automating transactional tasks through some form of e-procurement, whether that be an e-procurement punch-out system or some kind of purchasing control and spend manager control, 32% felt that was critical to them. And a bit like being linked to the value-add services, 29% stated increasing supplier responsibilities was really key. So broadly speaking, we're aligned with 2018, slight increase in number of people seeking to rationalise suppliers, but broadly speaking, similar. And UK supplier rationalisation came out key. Broadly in EMEA, both supplier rationalisation, training of end users on new procurement solutions and systems, and also the use of new services. And across the APAC territory, again, supplier rationalisation, increasing supplier responsibility, automation of tasks, and the use of new services came out loud and clear there. So, again, pretty consistent. So if we move on and think about delivering change, and when we talk about delivering change, one of the questions asked was, to what extent do you feel from the procurement community your role offers you the chance to drive change? And when we look at the output there, 56% of those responded scored on a scale of 1 to 10. They scored a 7, 8, 9, or 10. So 56% of respondees felt really able to influence change. 23% scored a 5 or a 6. So they feel moderately empowered to influence change, but maybe they don't have quite the influence they would like to have, with 21% rated between 1 and 4. So they really didn't feel that they had any significant opportunity to drive change. Not surprisingly, 71% of those in senior roles felt they can affect change most, versus 61% of those in more junior roles. And the need for stakeholder alignment is critical, as just over 38% of respondents state that they had a high level of alignment. Interestingly, with this one, the company size does not seem to influence the perception of being able to drive change. So whether it be large or small companies, the scale of the company didn't seem to affect change. It was just the level of the individual within the organisation. Innovation and supplier knowledge. This is an important area for us. So we have a couple of additional questions we would just like to get your input on, if you may.
Okay, so the second question we have today is, are you testing or using any IoT technology as part of a preventative maintenance strategy? So you should hopefully be able to see the question appear on screen and be able to select yes or no. and we'll just give you a few seconds to respond. And hopefully you'll be able to see the results on screen. Thank you for responding. We're looking about 15% said yes, you are, and 85% said no. That corresponds, I think, with the survey results. We see quite a low percentage adopting. And when this was run at the ProcureCon conference, I think we saw a higher percentage of people adopting it, as it was up to about 33%. But people were saying they were dipping the toe in the water, they weren't maybe fully committed or trying different technologies. But I think one of the biggest things here is, and what we're hearing from CIPS members, is you're not quite sure what to do or what to adopt. So perhaps you can share some insight into that, Peter, because I think people are looking for what to undertake.
Yeah, so I think the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, connected factories, connected buildings, there's multiple labels that we hear attached to the IIoT strategy, the Industrial Internet of Things. I think from our perspective, without any shadow of a doubt, as we move forward over the next kind of 5-year period, 3 to 5 years, the advent of connected technology, when we think about some of our major suppliers, companies like Schneider and others, almost 80% of their products have now got connectivity built into them. And we see there's now over 70 million connected devices, and linked to the need to improve asset performance and reliability, there's no doubt about it that IIoT is a fast emerging technology and a growing trend. As Danielle says, when we did the survey in the US, it was 32% said yes, they are testing IIoT, and here it's 15. So I think it's fair to say we are at the early stage, the early adopters. There are lots of the manufacturers that are working around this technology, and I would say for RS Components, it's absolutely a core strand of our innovation and our strategy moving forward. Because we believe, as opposed to being in a reactive maintenance environment where we are responding to a breakdown or a failure, the more we can do around understanding performance and predict failure, the better it will enable us to perform. We all know that planned maintenance is 4 times lower in costs than unplanned maintenance, and that comes from a variety of areas, both the loss of interruption to production, but also from a procurement perspective. If you know something is going to fail in advance, you have a better opportunity to procure the relevant items at a more competitive rate, as opposed to if you've got a machine breakdown and failure and you absolutely need to procure the item at the quickest opportunity, sometimes some of the commercial leverage it disappears. So I think from our perspective, we see a slightly different future, or we see the future changing as we pan out, and the more we can link assets and have low-cost sensors on the line that can sense a product, sense its condition, predict failure, link it into a CMMS system, a computerized maintenance management system, which is in turn dovetailed into your ERP system, into your e-procurement system, which punches out seamlessly to an e-procurement platform with a vendor such as RS. The more we can do to completely streamline the source-to-pay process and hopefully introduce additional efficiencies. But I think it's fair to say, as Danielle says, people are dipping their toe in the water. I think many people know it's coming. People just don't really have a detailed strategy of how they're going to apply it in their business. And we're no different. I guess we're working very hard to develop the right propositions and the right solutions. But it's very interesting to see that even at 15%, as it was just now, I think that would be higher than it was a year ago, when I think it was 6 to 7% a year ago. So almost doubling the number of participants from a bigger section where IIoT is becoming a theme, and I would certainly urge everybody to have it on their agenda.
Great, thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to go to our final poll question for today. So you'll see another question pop up on your screen now. And we've asked, are you being engaged by engineers in your company around supplier capability to support Industry 4.0 and the industrial Internet of Things? So we're really keen to understand this engagement and alignment. And again, we'll just give you a few seconds to respond. Great, thank you very much for responding. So you should be able to see the results on screen. So only 16% of attendees today said yes, they are being engaged by engineers, and a staggering 84% said no.
I think we covered it in our discussion around the previous question. We are at an early adopter stage. I think certainly in our conversations with engineers, it is growing in its prevalence, and so I'm sure that's a trend that will increase. But as I say, we're at very early stage. So thank you very much for your feedback on those questions. Excuse me. Right, just back to the slides, and just one or two final slides to finish on before we go into any questions. When we talk about innovation, and we've just been talking about IIoT, which is one of the more innovative areas that's coming into our arena, we asked some questions around innovation and supplier knowledge, and how key they are to influencing plans. So actually we've got the numbers here. As you can see, companies with an IIoT strategy in place, which is appropriate given what we've just been asking. 2018 was 4%, 2019 was 7%, and as you, ladies and gentlemen, have just confirmed, you know, we've got maybe 15, 16% starting to talk about it. So hopefully you can see in a relatively short period of time there is a definite increase, and I think that really is well aligned, as I covered just now, with the stated need to improve asset performance. The fact that your engineers can fit sensing and retrofit sensing to established and aging asset to now more cost effectively assess the performance of the machine and improve the asset performance and efficiency, I think will only be a trend that continues. Respondents stated, also talked about some important areas such as managed inventory options. I think the need to provide things such as, I think the number one respondent was the need to provide vendor managed inventory solutions, be that vending solutions, be that open bin systems, be that fully stores outsourcing, that the management of vendor managed inventory solutions was the number one additional service that came out from the survey as a driver. Number two was branded part substitutions, and particularly things like OEM conversions, where you have a requirement for commercially available spares for them to be substituted as opposed to buying them through the original OEMs, and also own brand conversion could all link into there. Number three, I think we've touched about it a lot, the engineering, monitoring and the performance of assets, and then number four was the overall asset performance and reliability. So things that we've discussed as we go through. So as I said at the outset, these slides are designed to give you a taster and to give you an overview of the research. You will get the full pack, and there's a lot of granular detail in the pack when it comes through, which I'm sure you will be able to look at and share with your colleagues. In summary, we're seeing an ongoing increase around budgets, an ongoing pressure, I should say, to reduce budgets. Ongoing need to rationalise supplier base, and a range of approaches to achieve stakeholder alignment are being deployed. Customers are looking to lean on suppliers even more than in the past to understand new technologies and solutions, and specifically the biggest change is a need to improve asset performance and reliability, and ultimately to continue to drive procurement efficiencies. So we will open up any questions that we have at the moment. What I would say, and I'll repeat it in a moment, but you have my personal contact details on the last slide. Either after this session or once you've received the paper and read it, please do feel free at any stage, if you have any questions or you want to challenge any of the research or any of the findings from the paper, please do feel free to reach out, to call, to email, and be delighted to have some further debate and conversation around the subject. Okay, so I'm going to pass over for any questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Peter, for sharing some of those insights today. I hope you found it really valuable. And we've started to get quite a few questions come through now, so we'll open up the Q&A for the last 15 minutes or so and get through as many as possible. So there's some good takeaways from Peter there today, which I'm hoping you'll be able to take away. And please do feel free to reach out. And as I said, you will get the recording directly from RS and it will be made available. We'd encourage you to share it with your colleagues and kind of peers as well. Obviously, to drive this business change and engagement, it can't be done on your own. So we'd encourage you to share with your teams as well. Okay, first question, Peter. Obviously, we talked about influencing quite a lot and influencing change. You mentioned 56% felt they could influence change, which is quite low, but 21% feel unable to influence change at all. Does that surprise you?
Does it surprise me? Does it surprise me? I think, yeah. I mean, it's a changing landscape. Would be my first answer. I think, you know, I've been doing this now for 25 years, as I say, and certainly, I think there was a big divide between the procurement community, the procurement professionals, and the engineering and maintenance professionals in the past. Personally, I see I see both parties coming much closer together. When we engage increasingly with customers, we are talking to both the procurement stakeholders and the engineering stakeholders at the same time. So I think we're seeing a positive trend. However, we do still have, you know, I think a challenge in all businesses to get aligned KPIs. It's no different in our business, where we have different functions all doing the very best they think they can for their business, but their KPIs are not ultimately aligned. And I see that within the customer base, our customer base. So maybe it doesn't surprise me. I think there's still some way to go. But as I say, I would say that certainly in my time in this type of role, not just within RS, but in this type of role, I'm seeing an increasing alignment between procurement, maintenance, and probably inventory management and finance within our customers, and that actually helps our customers and it helps us as a supplier. The more we can get alignment with the stakeholders, so I would certainly advocate anyone listening to try and get, you know, real stakeholder alignment in their organisations before talking to people like us.
Great. And have you seen any great successes, or people shared their success stories with you and what they did differently? Yeah,
I think there are many examples. It would be probably inappropriate for me to talk about specific customers or specific company names. Very happy to connect like-minded companies. If anybody is facing a challenge, please feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about your challenges, and I would inevitably be able to connect you with a similar business in a similar industry in a non-competing environment that's probably been able to be successful. But go back to what I said just now, where we have seen success is where the customers have got multiple stakeholder engagement and buy-in from their side, and then they're coming to companies such as RS with a uniform and consistent collective view of all of the different stakeholder requirements, both from a procurement through to engineering, through to inventory, through to finance. And it's much easier for us to then craft a solution that meets everyone's objectives. So there are many examples where customers have done that very well, and unfortunately some examples where it doesn't feel so joined up, but happy to share that offline, probably better.
Great, thank you for that offer, Peter, and people feel free to uptake that offer if you are struggling. Obviously, it's good to share knowledge, and if it isn't a direct compete for you, then it's good to learn some new skills. Second question we have, Peter, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. You talked about the number one focus still being reducing operational budgets. With the growing pressures, How is this impacting conversations you're having with procurement on cost reduction, and how are you working on solutions together?
I think there's two areas. I think obviously the price of the widget is always important. It's always going to be important, and that is a given. But I think increasingly, and certainly over the last 5 years, there's a growing total cost of ownership discussion where we're looking at the holistic cost, both of the cost of buying the product, the cost of storing the product, the cost of using the product. Sometimes it's a solution that is maybe more expensive but lasts twice as long or 3 times as long. And so I'm seeing a definite trend where people are, I don't wish to say that the cost of the product is not important, because it is, but people are clearly looking increasingly at the total cost of ownership, which I think particularly in MRO, when you've got a low average order value, is paramount to drive that efficiency.
Definitely, and I think the pressure, like you talked about, is still there to reduce operational budgets. So how can you ensure that the spend delivers the most value? You talked about vendor-managed inventory, but we have a question to ask, how can we make sure that it delivers the most value? And then would that be your suggestion?
Specifically around vendor-managed inventory?
Yeah.
I think, it's very difficult. When you look at MRO, maintenance, repair and overhaul, some people call it miscellaneous, random and out of control. That's the unofficial version of it. But it is very difficult to predict, and I think you need a different strategy for different items. So we very often use the phrase runners, repeaters and strangers. So runners are the items that are moving regularly and often. Repeaters are semi-regular but not fast movers, and then strangers are the items that move very infrequently. And I think the key is around making sure you've got the right overall engineering maintenance strategy to try and drive standardization wherever possible, because very often people call the same item 15 different names and they're actually buying one item. And so data integrity is absolutely paramount. But if you've got the right data integrity, if you've got the right if you like, OEM strategy and standardization program, then I think it's a case of thinking about, is it a runner, is it a repeater, or is it a stranger, and having the right inventory solution for that. Also, the criticality of the item for the plant. If it is a critical item, then it needs to be held on plant, whether it's a vendor-managed inventory or whether it's a customer-managed inventory, doesn't matter, but you just need to make sure you've got the right items where you need them at the right time. I think the beauty with some of the vendor-managed solutions today is, first of all, because they come with great insight and great reporting, and you can see consumption and usage and who's using what items, it naturally elicits a behavioural change. If people are accountable for what products they take and what products they use, that changes their behaviour, positively and negatively sometimes. But you have that insight and you have that visibility, and I think it's a case of being flexible, trying things, but if you've got the right insight in terms of consumption and usage, then I think you can profile your inventory well with any given supplier's inventory, and then you can get the optimum level of inventory control and cost depending on the different type of product. I don't know if that answers the question, but...
Yeah, it does.
Yeah?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
You talked about ethical procurement and ethical and sustainable procurement, and that is one of the key drivers for our members. And we have a question now on what RS are doing to support sustainable supply of MRO.
Okay, that's a great question, and a big subject. So one of my pleasures is I'm also the chair of the Environmental Health and Safety Forum here at RS, and so everything from the whole end-to-end supply chain. So we work first of all with our suppliers upstream who are supplying us, and so we are constantly auditing their supply chains. We are measuring their performance in terms of their sustainability. We are looking at everything from the number of shipments to the type of shipments to the type of packaging, how often it's delivered to us, can it go directly from us to the customer, We're looking at the vehicle types. Are they using electrical vehicles? And everything you can try and imagine within the end-to-end supply chain. We're trying to do the same thing within our own supply chain. So, simple example, we recently moved towards recyclable Jiffy bags. It was a considerable on-cost for the business and an on-cost that had to be borne by the business. It couldn't be passed on to the customers, but we felt it's really important in our commitment to sustainability that we do that and we live and breathe what we're trying to do. So I think everything from, as I say, the way in which we source products to the way in which we store products to the way in which we deliver products, we try and look after. When it comes to our own internal ways of working, even down to things like we have a number of company car drivers, so we heavily incentivise and subsidise people to drive electric vehicles. The electric charging points, you go around the site now, and the challenge is for us to keep up with the demand because there are more and more of our people driving electric vehicles, which is absolutely what we want to do. So again, the more we can consolidate shipments, the more we can deliver them in recyclable packaging, the more we can be cost effective and environmentally friendly in the way in which we do our business. We use video conferences rather than meetings wherever possible. We try to reduce air miles. And like many companies, I'm sure on this call, there's a plethora of areas that we're trying to address.
Great, thank you for sharing that and some useful things there. Another question we've got is, how crucial do you think it is for procurement professionals to go out and gain understanding and experiences of the end user's requirements as a way to help drive change?
I think we talked just now about the influence that procurement professionals can have. And I think with any business, whether you are an RS Components trying to sell to a customer, or whether you are a procurement professional trying to service all of your internal stakeholders, it's all about stakeholder management. So until you walk a mile in that other person's shoes, I don't think you truly understand the pressures and challenges they face within their business. And I go back to what I said earlier, I think everybody wants to do the right thing and everybody thinks they're doing the right thing for their customers or for their area of the business. But I think it's paramount, I would say, that the procurement professionals go to the end users. But equally, I would also advocate the end users spend some time within procurement to understand the challenges that the procurement professionals face, because everybody thinks they're a buyer, everybody thinks they're a procurement professional, and everybody thinks they can buy it a penny cheaper, or a pound cheaper, or a euro cheaper, or a dollar cheaper, and of course they can, but that may not be the right solution. So that sharing of experience, I would say, is critical.
Definitely, and I think we encourage our members as well to show where they're adding value over and above just the cost savings. So that's key. We have got time for probably one more question. So you mentioned in your presentation that only a third of companies stated that e-procurement automation is a solution they are seeking. From the supplier side, can you identify any trending technology being used across most customers, and do you receive requests for integrating with those e-procurement platforms, or you don't see customers looking for such a collaborative working environment with yourselves?
Okay, I think the third of companies stated that's the message coming back from those participants who took part in the survey. We, within RS Components, see a very different landscape, I have to say. That landscape does vary from market to market and from territory to territory. But if I take Northern Europe, RS Components Northern Europe, 72% of all of our business is done via some form of digital trading platform. That may be an e-procurement platform, it may be a purchasing manager, maybe a spend control, it may be directly online on the web, but we see that as a growing trend. And indeed, our backlog of installations of e-procurement solutions is something that is a challenge for us, because we're having to apply more and more resource to deploy more and more e-procurement solutions. So whilst from the survey, the message was it's a third of companies see that as a solution, in our in our arena, we're seeing a much bigger pull for that. I think what we're also seeing is the emergence of a different landscape as well, because you have vendors, many vendors, the likes of us and others, who will offer e-procurement and different types of e-procurement. But I think we're seeing the emergence of a number of things. So we're seeing curated marketplaces coming to the fore, where there are a number of vendors and suppliers out there who want to talk to people like RF to be part of their curated marketplace, along with many other peers, and they offer that solution. We also see the likes of Cooper and Ariba becoming more and more prevalent. And as I say, it's stronger in some territories, so there's a particular pull from Germany, but we're seeing that emergence right across EMEA and indeed globally, the US and globally, where we're seeing a definite emergence from some of those platforms. And so we are certainly receiving requests both from those platforms to participate and from some of our larger end user customers to say, are you compatible? Are you engaged with companies such as Ariba, such as Cooper? So we're definitely seeing a big trend in that area.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Peter. We've had an overwhelming amount of questions today, and we've probably only touched on a third of these. So apologies that we're coming close to the end of time. Any questions that we've not been able to ask today, we will have a record of these, and RS will be able to reach out to you directly after the webinar and answer anything that you may need them to do so. So, as I mentioned earlier, you will receive the recording and the report directly from RS. Feel free to respond, engage, keep the conversation up. I think there's lots of learnings here, and the conversation can keep going. So, I'd just like to thank Peter for today.
Pleasure.
On behalf of CIPS and attendees today, I hope you found it really valuable. We love doing these webinars and being able to share the insights that you've contributed to. So thank you very much. It's clear that the business challenges are going to continue, and we encourage CIPS members to look at ways that they can add value. We've talked about this a lot. Upskill yourselves, your team, and to adapt to the challenges that you're going to face. It's an exciting time for procurement now. There's lots of things to be involved in, lots of things to add value. So learn some new skills, master the art of influencing, engage with your stakeholders, spend time with them, understand their challenges, like Peter said, and you will hopefully see a great degree of change. And just on behalf of Peter and I today, we'd like to thank attendees for joining us. For any CIPS members who've joined us today, please don't forget to log your 1 hour CPD under your My CIPS account, which you might be contributing towards your chartered status bank of hours. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope you join us again soon. Thank you.